You spent real money on that room, and it still doesn't look the way it does in your head. You can't say why. The furniture is nice, the paint was carefully chosen. Nothing in there is wrong, exactly. And yet, when you walk in, some quiet part of you registers that it stopped short of the thing you were reaching for. You've rearranged it, maybe more than once. You've added a throw, swapped a lamp, moved the chair 18 inches to the left and then back again. And each time, you've felt that small flicker of hope, followed by the same flat verdict. Close. Not it. I want to tell you exactly why. Because after 15 years walking into other people's homes for a living, I've learned that the gap you're feeling is almost never a money gap. It's an information gap. And it's a very specific one. Here's the promise I'm making you for the next stretch of your time. By the time we're done, you'll understand the handful of decisions that separate a room that looks decorated from a room that looks designed. And more importantly, you'll understand why those decisions work on the human brain. Not what to buy, why it lands. Because once you understand the why, you stop guessing. You stop buying things that don't fix anything. You develop the one thing every good designer actually has, which is not taste so much as a reliable filter. That filter is what makes a home look expensive, and you can build it in an afternoon of understanding. So let me show you what's actually happening in that room of yours. Start with your eyes, because everything begins there. And because your eyes are far less honest than you think they are. When you walk into a space, your visual system does not calmly inventory the contents. It moves. It travels along lines, snags on edges, jumps to the brightest point, and constructs a sense of the room's size and quality in a fraction of a second, long before your conscious mind has formed a single opinion. That snap judgment is the feeling you get on the threshold, and it is almost entirely built from things you've never been taught to notice. Take your curtains. I'd put money on where your rod is hung, because nearly everyone does it the same way. A few inches above the window frame, bracketed tight to the glass, panels stopping somewhere near the sill or hovering an awkward inch off the floor. It feels logical. The window is the thing, so you frame the thing. But here's what's actually happening to the person standing in the doorway. Their eye runs up the wall, hits that rod partway up, and stops. The entire band of wall above the curtain becomes dead air. The brain reads the ceiling as lower than it is, and the window as smaller than it is, and it files the whole room under cramped, without ever telling you it did so. Now move the rod. Take it to within a few inches of the ceiling. Hang panels long enough to just kiss the floor, and watch what changes. Nothing structural has moved, not one wall. But now, the eye runs the full vertical height of the room before it finds a place to rest. And that uninterrupted travel is read by the brain as height, and height is read as grandeur. This is the single cheapest illusion in the entire discipline, and it is the first thing I do in almost every room I touch. The panels themselves can be plain. I've hung simple linen at ceiling height that read as more luxurious than custom drapery mounted too low, because the brain was responding to the line, not the fabric. If your curtains are sitting low right now, that's your weekend. Raise the rod. The room will exhale. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the same principle that governs your curtains governs something you have genuinely never thought about, and once I name it, you will never stop seeing it. Your baseboards. Nobody talks about baseboards. That silence is exactly why so many renovated homes still feel like builder boxes long after the new floors go in. I once worked in a house where the owners had redone almost everything, beautifully, real craftsmanship throughout, and the rooms still felt subtly unfinished in a way none of them could name. The culprit was sitting at ankle height the whole time. The original 3-inch builder trim, the thinnest, cheapest profile a developer can legally install. We swapped it for a tall profile, added a slim picture rail near the ceiling, and touched nothing else. The change was almost embarrassing in its size. Think about it this way. When you frame a painting, the frame does something the canvas can't do for itself. It tells the eye where the image ends and the wall begins. It grants weight and importance and says, in effect, this was chosen. Trim does that for the room itself. A tall baseboard anchors the wall firmly to the floor, gives it a base, a sense of gravity. Crown or picture molding caps it at the top, draws the eye upward, and makes the ceiling feel deliberate rather than accidental. Without those frames, the walls simply stop, top and bottom, and a surface that just stops reads to the brain as provisional, temporary, cheap. It doesn't matter what's hanging on it. The builder default is 3 inches. Designers routinely spec 5, 6, 7, sometimes more. This is not a demolition job. In most homes, it's caulk, paint, and a nail gun over a weekend. And here's a detail most people never clock. Trim is one of the specific things real estate agents point to when they call a home custom rather than cookie cutter. They may not articulate why, but their eye is doing exactly what your guest's eyes do. It's reading the frame. But framing the walls only helps if what's happening across those walls, room to room, isn't fighting you. And in most homes, it is. Let me describe the average house built or updated in the last 20 years. The kitchen is a warm grayish. The hall is a cooler gray-blue. The living room is a beige that doesn't quite belong to either. Every one of those choices was reasonable in isolation, made on a different day, in a different mood, holding a different paint chip. The problem is that you don't experience a home in isolation. You move through it. And every time your eye crosses a threshold into an unrelated color, it has to reset, recalibrate, start the room over. You don't notice the resets consciously. You just feel, by the end, that the house is busy, smaller than it is, a little tiring. A designer prevents that without painting every room the same, which would be its own kind of dead. What they do is choose a palette of 3 to 5 tones up front and make sure every room carries at least 2 of them somewhere, on the walls, in the upholstery, in the art. The colors shift room to room, but the family stays intact, so the eye moves through the home without ever having to start over. That continuity is doing something almost magical. It makes the whole house feel like one larger, calmer space. And calm, continuous, intentional, that is a huge part of what makes a home look expensive, because chaos is free, and coherence takes thought. And the eye knows the difference. You don't need a full repaint to begin. Pull your 2 strongest tones from the things you can't easily change: your flooring, your cabinetry, your largest piece of upholstery, and treat those as your anchors. From now on, every color decision has to echo at least one of them. That's the filter. Hold each new thing up against it, and the patchwork slowly resolves into something that looks deliberate. Now, while we're talking about how the eye moves through a space, let me hand you the tool designers use to bend that movement on purpose, because almost everyone owns a weaker version of it and uses it completely wrong. Mirrors. You already know mirrors make a room feel bigger. That's not the insight, and frankly, it's where most people's understanding stops, which is why they hang a modest mirror over the dresser and consider the matter closed, functional, forgettable. A designer doesn't think of a mirror as decoration at all. They think of it as architecture, the same category as a window or an archway, something that changes the structure of how the room is perceived. Here's the mechanism. A large, well-placed mirror doesn't merely reflect the room. It manufactures the impression of another room beyond the wall. Angle it to catch a window, and you have functionally added a second window, doubling the daylight your brain perceives. Aim it at a beautiful lamp or a good piece of furniture, and you've doubled that too, and added depth the wall never had. I once had a client with one of those long, narrow hallways that feels like a corridor no matter what you do to it. We leaned a single oversized mirror at the far end, tilted it a few degrees, and the corridor became a room with a view. Guests kept saying the house felt bigger inside than it looked from the street. That was one mirror. The thing people get wrong is scale. A mirror that's too small for its wall does almost nothing. It just floats there, a polite suggestion. When you're choosing one, go bigger than feels comfortable. That instinct to play it safe with size is precisely the instinct a designer overrides on your behalf. I can't move on without saying this next part, because it's the one that sounds absurd until you understand the science, and then it reorganizes how you think about quality entirely. So stay with me. Walk through your home in your mind and count your metal finishes. The kitchen faucet, the cabinet pulls, the light fixtures, the door handles, the towel bars, the lamp bases. If you're past 2, you have what I call accumulated finish, and it's quietly costing you. Not because mixing metals is wrong. Good designers mix them deliberately. The word that matters is deliberately. They pick 2, commit, and repeat those 2 throughout the home. What most people have instead is a finish history. One piece came with the house. One replaced something that broke. One came home from a different store on a different afternoon. None of them is wrong alone. Together, they create a low hum of visual noise. 1,000 tiny signals that the home was assembled by accident rather than composed on purpose. Here's the fix, and it costs nothing today. Identify the finish that already appears most often in your permanent fixtures and crown it the standard. Allow exactly one complementary finish as an accent. Every future purchase has to match one of the 2. That's it. That single decision becomes a filter that makes every hardware choice for the rest of your life easier and quietly pulls the whole house into agreement over time. Now let's talk about something your guests experience without ever once looking at it. Because design is not only what the eye reports, it's what the ear and the hand report too. And those channels run straight past your conscious defenses. Sound. The sound your cabinets make when they close. I'm aware of how that lands. Stay with me, because it's real. Part of why a high-end kitchen showroom feels different the moment you step in is the materials and the layout, yes, but a quiet, enormous part of it is acoustic. Every drawer glides and settles with a soft padded click. Nothing rattles, nothing slams. Your nervous system registers that softness as control, and control as quality, before your thinking mind has formed a word. In an ordinary kitchen, the drawers bang and the cabinet doors clap shut with a hollow thud that cuts across the room. You've lived with yours so long, you've stopped hearing it. Your guests haven't. It's shaping their read of your home in real time, and they will never know it did. Soft close hinges and drawer runners retrofit onto almost any cabinet you already own. It's not a complex job. A competent handyman handles it in a few hours, and a confident person with a screwdriver can do it over a Saturday. The cost is small, and the return in perceived quality is wildly out of proportion to it, because you are buying a luxury signal that bypasses the eyes entirely and speaks directly to the hand and ear, which are far harder to fool and far easier to please. That idea, that your brain is reading signals you never consciously see, brings us to the surface you look at more than any other, and almost certainly have working against you, your countertop. Walk over, or picture it, and count the objects on it. If you're past 5, the counter is undoing the work everything else in that room is trying to do. This is the single most consistent tell between a designer-finished kitchen and a lovingly finished by the owner one. The designer surfaces are nearly bare. Not cold, not sterile, just edited. A bowl of fruit, a board leaning against the backsplash, a small plant. 3 things, maybe 4, and everything else lives behind a door. Here's the neurology. Visual clutter forces the eye to keep working, item to item to item, with no place to rest, and a brain that can't rest reads the environment as a workspace rather than a designed space. It doesn't matter how good your stone is or how carefully you chose the tile behind it. Pile the counter with the toaster and the mail and the vitamins and the phone chargers, and the design simply vanishes underneath. The room reports itself as busy, and busy is the opposite of expensive. Designers solve this 2 ways. They build in enough concealed storage that things genuinely have somewhere to go, because clutter is very often just homelessness. And then they style what remains on purpose, using a formula worth memorizing. Odd numbers, varied heights, and a mix of one natural material with one functional object. 3 items, 3 different heights, one of them organic. That recipe works on almost any surface in the house. The goal was never to throw things away. It's to give them a home behind a door, and then keep what shows ruthlessly, almost severely, edited. And the things you do choose to leave out follow one more rule. The one that separates the homes that arrive from the ones that get close and stall. Use real materials, even in tiny amounts. People treat natural materials as all or nothing. The belief goes, if I can't afford the marble island and the stone floors and the genuine timber beams, there's no point. So they default to the synthetic version of everything and wonder why the room feels a half step off. That belief is costing them, and here's why. There are superb engineered materials now. Quartz that mimics marble, vinyl that mimics oak, and I specify them constantly and recommend them to you without hesitation. But the real thing, even a sliver of it, is read differently by the eye. Your visual system evolved reading natural variation. The wandering vein in stone, the irregular grain in wood, the way real material catches light unevenly. It clocks authenticity at a level beneath language. So you don't need the marble kitchen. You need one true thing. A marble tray on an otherwise plain counter, a single real wood beam against a white ceiling, a small niche of genuine stone in a shower that's otherwise honest porcelain. These touches needn't be expensive, they only have to be real. Because one authentic natural element raises the perceived quality of everything around it. And here's the quiet bonus. Natural materials contain many tones at once, so a piece of stone or wood sits in harmony with almost any palette you've chosen. One real element, and your color flow problem and your luxury problem are both eased at once. Which leaves the walls themselves. And what I'm about to describe changed how I see flat drywall permanently. Picture 2 identical rooms. Same footage, same furniture, same floor, same light, same paint. In the first, the walls run flat from baseboard to ceiling. In the second, the lower third of one wall wears simple board and batten, and a slim picture molding runs the room at chair height. The first reads as a rental. The second reads as a home someone designed. Nothing else differs. Flat drywall is the signature of builder-grade construction because it's the fastest, cheapest way to close a space, and it isn't wrong so much as mute. It communicates nothing. Architectural detail, board and batten, wainscoting, picture molding, a coffered ceiling, gives a wall depth and shadow, and the unmistakable evidence of a decision. Shadow is the key word. A flat wall throws no shadow, and the eye has nothing to hold. A paneled wall catches light along every edge and gives the eye texture to read, and texture reads as craft, and craft reads as expense. The relief is that almost none of this is structural. Board and batten is strips of wood glued and nailed to the wall you already have, then painted out so it reads as one piece. Picture molding is a length of trim and a nail gun. Wainscot panels come pre-made. These are weekend afternoons, not contractor invoices. And I've watched a few $100s of wall treatment finish a room that had been fully decorated for years and never once felt done. And now the one that matters most. The one I see transform a room more reliably than anything else on earth. The reason so many beautifully furnished spaces still go flat and lifeless the moment the sun drops. Your lighting. Or rather, the fact that you almost certainly don't have a plan. You have a bulb. One light in the center of the ceiling is not a lighting plan. It is the absence of one. Think of the rooms that have genuinely felt luxurious to you. A good hotel lobby, a serious restaurant, the home of someone whose taste quietly intimidates you. You probably can't name a single light source in any of them, and that is the entire point. When lighting is done well, you don't see the fixtures, you see the effect. Warmth pooling in some corners, brightness exactly where hands are working, a soft glow lifting an object off a shelf. The room has dimension because the light has dimension. Now your room, with its single ceiling fixture and maybe one lamp, everything at one height, one intensity, one color of light. It is technically lit and emotionally flat, like a showroom before the stylist arrived. Designers always build in layers. Ambient, the general wash that stands in for daylight. Task, focused light where you read or chop or work. Accent, the deliberate beam that lifts a painting or a plant or a textured wall out of the dark. You don't need all three in every room. You need more than one, because a single source flattens everything to the same plane, and the brain reads flat as cheap. In a living room, that might be recessed lights on a dimmer for ambient, a floor lamp in a corner for warmth, and one small directional fixture on a piece of art. A few $100s, including the dimmer, and the room moves from flat to finished in an afternoon. And the dimmer deserves its own breath. If your overhead can't dim, you are locked into one mood, one intensity, one version of that room forever. The same harsh wash at a dinner party that you get scrubbing a pan. A dimmer is a $15 part and a 20-minute job, and it is the lowest effort, highest impact change in this entire conversation. Once you've lived in a properly layered room at night, the single overhead bulb becomes physically hard to tolerate. So here's the reframe I promised you. The one I want lodged in your mind the next time you stand in that doorway, feeling that the room came close and stopped. You have been thinking of your home as a collection of things to be improved, one object at a time. A better sofa, a nicer rug, the right lamp, finally. But a room that looks expensive was never about the quality of its objects. It is about the evidence of decisions. The rod raised to the ceiling, the two finishes held to faithfully, the counter edited down to 3 honest things, the light split into layers, every one of them a small, visible proof that a mind was here and chose. Cheapness isn't the absence of money. It's the absence of decisions. And decisions, unlike marble, are free. Stop shopping for your room. Start deciding about it. That's the whole secret. And now, it's yours.